Hi guys, welcome back to the Home and Homestead. My name is Rebecca, and today you'll be joining me in my kitchen where we do some money saving tips as well as cook with me using leftovers. This is a great way to save a little money and reimagine another meal out of some leftover food in your refrigerator or freezer. So together we're going to be taking some leftover side dishes that we had from a recent luncheon, and we'll be creating a cottage pie or a shepherd's pie using some ground beef. Traditionally, a shepherd's pie, you would use lamb. I have some nice ground beef from our half a cow that we get, so I'll be utilizing that to make this leftover meal. So follow along while we do a little cooking and reinventing some leftovers to make a new meal. So first what we're going to do is heat up this large pan to medium-high heat. I'll add a little avocado oil. And we'll let this oil heat up a little bit. So now this oil is heated up a little bit, I will add some onion that I had. It's about a medium-sized onion that I diced up. I'll add a little salt to the onion because I like to add salt when I'm cooking my onion, and that helps to draw out some of that liquid. While these onions saute a bit, for the cottage pie today I'll be doing what I like to call a little of this, a little of that recipe. So I'm taking whatever quantity I have of something that's left over and putting things together in order to make something tasty and a new meal creation. So I had an onion in the refrigerator that I needed to use up. I diced it up and we'll be using that today. I have a few pounds of ground beef from a half a cow. I took that out to help complete this meal. I have some nice mashed potatoes, some beef gravy, and some really delicious corn from a recent luncheon. So I'm going to add all these ingredients together to come up with this new meal that we will have for dinner. It's kind of fun to look in the refrigerator and check out what leftover items you have or what in the crisper looks like it's getting kind of sad and needs to be used up, and try to come up with a new meal and use up some leftover foods that would otherwise go to waste. So it's a great way to not waste food as well as save some money in the process. And you get to be creative in the kitchen to come up with a new meal from bits and pieces of previous meals. These onions are just starting to brown up a little bit, so I'll add a little black pepper. Now let's add a few pounds of some ground beef. This is my meat masher here. Now we'll get this beef browned up as well. Now that the ground beef has been cooking for a bit and is starting to release some of its juices, now's a good time to add any seasonings that you would want for seasoning your meat and onions more. I really like Kinder's The Blend. It's a salt, garlic, and pepper blend. So we'll get some in there. Stir this around. We'll let this keep cooking. Okay, so now the ground beef has browned up nicely. I can really smell that garlic pepper blend that we put in here. Now I'm going to be adding the ingredients to make the sauce for our cottage pie or shepherd's pie with ground beef. So first I'll use up the beef gravy from the luncheon. Then I'll add 2 cups of a beef broth or beef stock. And we'll stir this together. Then I'll bring this up to a simmer. And then I'll add a little cornstarch to help thicken up this sauce. So now that this has come up to a simmer, I took about a half a cup of water and about 3 tablespoons of cornstarch, and I created a slurry. So I'll dump that in and give this a little stir. And now as this cornstarch cooks, it'll help thicken the sauce that we created for our ground beef and onion mixture. So now we'll let this come up to a simmer again so that the sauce can thicken. Then we'll move on to the next step of creating our cottage pie. So our sauce is thickened up a little bit here. Made more of like a gravy type of a sauce. You can also add a little Worcestershire sauce. Just add a few squirts here and there. There we go. Now let's assemble our cottage pie. Alright, so I have the oven preheating to 375 degrees. That's giving our meat and gravy sauce a chance to cool down a little bit before we start adding to the layers for this cottage pie. Now if you were to do the traditional cottage pie, you could add thyme, a bay leaf, maybe some red wine and some tomato paste to that gravy mixture that we made. But again, I'm just doing a little this and a little that recipe, throwing together what I have just to use up things to make this new meal. You also could do carrots, onions, and celery, or a mirepoix for the vegetables, but I have this delicious corn, so I want to use that today. So it'll add a nice sweet twist to this dish. Alright, so first what we're going to do is add our meat gravy sauce to the bottom of a baking dish. If you were to use the carrots, onions, and celery, then you could have cooked that with the meat and onions as well, so that'd be nice and cooked through. I'm using a leftover vegetable with the corn, which is already cooked through. So now I'm going to add the corn. It's probably about 1.5 cups to 2 cups of corn here. I'll just sprinkle that on top of this meat mixture. If you had some leftover steamed vegetables from earlier in the week, that would work nicely as well. And now we'll just add our mashed potatoes to the top here. If you're using a mashed potato leftover such as I am, I'd recommend taking it out of the refrigerator and letting it get to room temperature so that it's easier to spread on top of the meat and vegetable layers. If you're making the mashed potato fresh, then it would be nice and soft and easy to spread already. And the final ingredient that we'll add is some shredded cheddar cheese. That's maybe about 1 cup. Now what I'm going to do is cover this with foil. Alright, so now I'm going to put this into the oven at 375 degrees for about a half hour. After the first 20 minutes of that cook time, I'll remove the foil so that the cheese and the potato layer can get nice and crispy. Another thing you could do is if you wanted to, you could prepare it as we did today, cover it with foil, and then stick this into the refrigerator. Then the next day you could take this out while the oven is preheating and cook it. That way you'd have a meal for tomorrow that you've already made ahead. So now let's get this cottage pie into the oven so that this can heat through and get nice and crispy on top. Alright guys, our cottage pie is finished baking. So I baked it for 20 minutes at 375 with it covered with the foil, and then I did another half hour with it uncovered. And now we have a nice crispy cheese topping, and the potatoes are nice and crispy on top as well. Let me get a closer look for you guys here. Nice and golden brown and bubbly. So now I'll let this cool for a bit. I have a cooling rack underneath this towel here. And once it cools a bit and sets, then I'll be able to cut a portion out and show you how it looks. Alright, so let's cut a piece here. Alright, here's a closer look. and our cottage pie. So you've just taken a few leftovers, combined them, and made a new delicious meal. So now we can have a nice tasty dinner, and all those little portions of leftovers will not be going to waste. Well, I hope you enjoyed this money-saving tip and cooking with me in the kitchen today, where we made a new meal out of leftovers of cottage pie, or shepherd's pie using ground beef instead of lamb. You can check out some other money-saving tips I have that are helpful in the kitchen, as well as in the house for cleaning and around the yard, if you're interested in gardening and small space gardening as well. Well, if you're new to the channel and haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. See you next time. Take care.